And now I'd like to introduce our, we can't call him a hometown hero, but he is definitely one of our heroes. This is John Gregg. Many of you know him from last year or have heard about him in the press. John, welcome again.
Thank you. You know, while he's doing that, I just was walking up here. Can I grab this real quick?
Oh, of course.
And I've seen this photograph a bunch of times, but I just noticed something about it that I've never seen before. And that's this little roll of paper here. And it reminds me of something I read about Ricketts, that he unrolled a piece of that butcher paper and put it up all over his walls, all around his lab down there. And he wrote in his little tight little script, without Wikipedia, without Google, he wrote everything that ever happened in human history, if you can imagine. He plotted wars and inventions and music and art, and he wrote it all out. And he compared things, and he looked for trends. And one thing he noticed is that it didn't have a progression, a steady line like a lot of people would think on evolution. It was punctuated. It was stair-steppy. It was what Stephen Jay Gould called later punctuated equilibrium. And that's how things happen. Things will flow along in a certain path, and then something will happen to disrupt the harmony and changes things. And that's kind of what that little voyage they took for 6 weeks down to the Sea of Cortez was like. They were both reeling. You've heard about it. You know, Grapes of Wrath was not well received. Steinbeck was really hurt by that. This was his community. He loved Salinas, and they turned on him. They burned his book. They called him a drug fiend and a ne'er-do-well and a communist. And when he went down to rent the boat on the docks, they wouldn't even rent him a boat. It was actually his friend and attorney, Toby Street, that knew, I don't know how to say his name, Orazio Ania, who suggested to his friend Bob Ferrante, or Peter Ferrante, that he lease the boat for $2,500 to take that trip down there. They wouldn't even consider renting it to Steinbeck. Ricketts was famous for sleeping with married women all over town, so he had a reason to go too. So they were both reeling and hurt, and went down there. And it was driving up with my father yesterday, and a nice drive up the state, and a lot of wildflowers out right now, poppies and mustard, and poppies grow in disturbed soil. In the UK, they put little lapel pins of poppies on for their Remembrance Day, their version of Veterans Day, because after the Battle of the Somme and the First World War, you know, the ground was devastated in trench warfare, and there was, you know, it was literally blood-soaked and ruined. And in the spring, the poppies all came up. They are the first flowers that come up through a ruined landscape. And it reminded me that these guys had this devastation, and they went down there on thin reasons. They said they were studying the effects of the Hoover Dam, like Kevin mentioned, but they were just looking to get out of town mainly. Steinbeck had even told his friends he was done with writing, that he had worked the novel and he could do no more with it. So he was going to do marine biology. And he was really, his marriage was falling apart. He had all the other problems. So he goes down there, and lightning struck because of the group that was together there, that, you know, the Ricketts and Carol too. She was very influential to Steinbeck, and some of his best work came at her urging. And from that little 6-week voyage, he listened to the stories of your relatives about the Cannery Row and the brothels and the wildness, and he wrote Cannery Row and then later Sweet Thursday from that. He listened to a shortwave radio about the resistance fighters in Norway when they were down in San Diego, and wrote the moon is down, whatever it's called. The Moon is Down?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Based on that. He heard a story about the Pearl in La Paz and wrote that book. Forgotten Village probably came from that. So most of the rest of his work, the really good work for the rest of his life, was incubated in that little 6-week trip. So out of that sore spot came some really nice work. I'm not here to talk about that. You guys have all heard about that. I'm here to talk about the Western Flyer today. It did that little 6-week voyage, and as Kevin outlines in his really good book, it had a whole life after that with the Frys and with lots of other people that were stewards of the boat and took care of it and had adventures on it. It had a big life beyond the Sea of Cortez. And it says in the book there that I'm the owner of the Western Flyer. You know, there's a lot of owners of the Western Flyer that are in this room. It's passed through a lot of hands, and it's like any work of art or something that you can't really own. It's something you take care of and pass to the next guy who's silly enough to take on the stewardship of it. So, I started this quest a long time ago, not as long as Bob did, but you know, a long time, and it's had its own life, and it's where it is today. It's in good hands. It's up in the Port Townsend shipyard where really knowledgeable people are taking it apart pretty much. It's basically, I guess the video doesn't play, so I'll do without that. It was a beautiful boat when it was launched in 1937 by Alan's relatives. And that boat remains pretty much the same today. I know you've seen pictures of it that it just looks like hell, but the bones of the boat are still good. Actually, it sank twice at its mooring, but it sank 2 other times and 2.5 other times. At one time it got a aluminum tank put in, and they used the wrong kind of welding rod on it, and the seams let go, and it filled with water. The crew didn't know how to swim that well, and they were waiting for the boat to fill up enough for them to step into the lifeboat. And the captain smelled something burning, and he went into the galley, and a guy named Sverre Hansen, who is the father of the Hansen brothers that are on the boat, the Northwestern. If any of you watch The Deadliest Catch, their father had his first day at sea on the Western Flyer. And he was the cook, and he was in there cooking steaks because he didn't want them to get ruined. And they wasted just enough time arguing about cooking the steak that they were able to, the Coast Guard came out and dropped a pump on the bow, and they were able to pump the boat out. So the boat had a knack for self-preservation, even getting rid of that captain that Kevin was talking about that had wrecked the previous 3 ships that he had been on. So the boat seemed to know how to get out of trouble. In fact, after Kevin's book, and that it had this, when I got involved with it, it had this guy that was going to maybe put it in a restaurant. That restaurant recently burned to the ground. I don't know if you guys saw it. So the boat has a knack of being in the right place at the right time. So I think it's in the right place now. It's in loving hands in the Port Townsend shipyard rights. Mostly what they're doing now is design work. We took out the original 14-ton Atlas 165 horsepower engine and are replacing it with a electric hybrid engine about the size of a microwave. Not because it's cool, although it is cool. It gives us a lot of flexibility in what we can do with it. One of the things we want to do with it is station keeping. So we want the boat to maintain its position in really deep water because we're going to have an ROV on it, a full ocean depth, a 4,000 meter capable ROV that we'll launch. And it will go down with HD cameras and a bunch of other data loggers and things and record things in the murky deep. So we want the boat to maintain its position really well. The wooden boat, the guys that made the boat came from a sailing culture. And the last picture that Alan had on his presentation was this beautiful profile of the frames. It's called a wine glass hull shape. And it's really slippery through the water, so that was important when you had a sail propelling your ship, and it's important if you have a little electric motor propelling your ship. It wasn't important when you had big diesel motors. So between the Western Flyer and now, the boats have gotten really inefficient through the water. They're fat and squat. They're like Winnebagos going through. They just overpowered them with diesel, and they just wanted to carry more fish. But this boat was still holding on to a little bit of the sailing culture where it still was slippery. So that will bode well for what we want to do with it. The electric motor also does something for us. It'll be able to run for 6 hours with a single charge. The hull speed of the boat was 11 knots. We can't quite do 11 knots for 6 hours. We can do about 9 knots for 6 hours. Then the generator comes on for 2 hours, and then you can run for 6 more hours. So it's a fairly efficient design. It's using Tesla battery wall technology. So the former fish hold is all going to be a lab space. It's going to have the the station for driving the ROV, as well as some other electronics. Mr. Gilly there is helping us outfit the boat with research equipment and state-of-the-art sort of sciencey stuff. And you know, we're replacing all that heavy diesel stuff in 100 tons of fit or 80 tons of fish capacity with some kids, and although kids are getting bigger, they're not that big. So we're having to reconfigure the weight and stability of the boat. So it's taken a little design time, but it's moving along fairly quickly. Just to mention quickly something that Kevin was talking about is this boat was really good at its job. It was a tool for people like Dennis, and they were really good at what they did. And what would happen is the whole fleet would turn its attention on a single fishery at a time. And on average, about 8 years, they would fish out that fishery. And so this boat would have this, like Kevin mentioned, this duplicitous sort of, it would alternately exploit and explore the sea. So one after another, it would get involved in these fisheries. They'd last about 8 years, and then it would do something good, like the trawl survey that Kevin mentioned off of Alaska for the fisheries department. That was a Dr. Gunderson that did, he did over 1,500 sediment and fish trawls, and the basis of his data that he collected off the Western Flyer, now the Gemini, was used when he testified before Congress in 1976, which then they passed the Magnuson Act, which pushed our territorial boundaries out 200 miles. So it then went up there and killed a bunch of crabs. So it went back and forth between good and evil, like most of us do. So right now it's in good hands. The boat got basically laser surveyed. They took over 1 million reference points of the boat. The fact that it sank actually was a good thing, because it was full of mud, and when it got put up on the hard, if it would have been clean and dry, it would have dried out and tweaked and cracked and twisted. Being full of mud, it sort of kept it there. It was in good shape. I think all of the lines overlapped the original design within 2 inches, so the boat never racked or twisted or did anything strange. It is pretty ugly to look at, but the inside of the house, it's amazing. It's all Honduran mahogany. It's all really good still. And the amazing thing about that is when most of the fishermen went to sea in these boats, and Dennis knows this better than anybody, that when the microwaves came out, that was a fisherman's best friend. They'd cut a hole in the wall, put a microwave in it, and they could eat a hot meal when they were fishing. For some reason, nobody ever did that on this boat. It's like they knew that it was okay, it was a good boat, or it had some kind of, I don't know what it was, but they didn't do it. They didn't cover it with Formica. They maintained the mahogany, and it looks pretty much as good today as it ever did. So the house of the boat, the deck of the boat is all good. The frames of the boat, the oak, is not good, and that will all have to be replaced. Which, when they built the boat in 1937, you know, they cut the wood out of their backyard, the Douglas fir. We're having to go to Haida Gwaii Island to get long enough pieces of Douglas fir to replace the planking, and all the way to France to get oak long enough to replace the frames, which will all be steam bent. Everyone in the U.S. cuts oak 16 feet 6 inches, because they either make 4-foot veneer out of it, or they make 4-foot wine barrels out of it. So they don't want to. 18 foot is a weird dimension. So we're having to go all the way to France to get the frames to replace. The boat was built with square nails, and we've sourced those, and so it'll be all put back together as original as possible. So from 100 feet, it'll look like the original boat. Inside, it'll be a more modern thing. Like I said, the shipwrights in Port Townsend, it Forrest Gumped its way there somehow and landed in the best place it could possibly be. There's a boat school up there where they still teach these guys how to use old world skills, and I was going to move the boat down to Monterey here. We have a boat yard in Moss Landing, and I was going to do the work down here. And when I got up there were guys with chisels and planes and hand saws, and they all knew what they were doing clearly. So it wasn't even the worst boat in the yard. They were working on other boats that are still fishing in Alaska, that are the same age and older, that are still working every day. that's one of its bad days. That's when they were towing it from Cortez back to Port Townsend. They were towing it, and nobody was on it, and it kept moving up ahead of the boat, like boats will just kind of drift around when you tow them. And this one, they said, was particularly unwieldy, so they were all spooked by it. It's in a nice little place now. We removed all of the nasty bits, and we set up a foundation that we're working with some different people on restoring it. So that's basically it. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Once it's established, where will its port be, and how often will you go out to sea, and for how long?
We hope to keep that really loose. We have a board which Gilly and Susan are both members of that we'll meet and outline its missions each year. And we hope that it changes each year. One thing we didn't want to have happen was to, for lack of a better word, whore the boat out doing sunset cruises and whale watches. We wanted to go out and do real science and not do gratuitous drags with a net and look at microscopes. We want to work with the researchers and collect real data that people can use. Kids are pretty sophisticated and they can smell fake science on the way. So it's challenging to come up with a program that changes and evolves all the time. But I'm excited. There's already been a lot of meetings. Some people from the Monterey area have flown up to Washington to meet with their school superintendent that's a really interested guy in blending the whole science and literature thing like Billy and Susan have been doing for years. So hopefully the mission will change all the time. It'll be here most of the time, but I don't think all of the time. So sometimes it's going to recreate the voyage to the Sea of Cortez, sometimes to the Alaskan voyage that never got done. I've heard some, the areas like San Francisco and Seattle and LA, they're served pretty well by research vessels and kids get to go out and do things. There's a million little bergs in between that the kids just see the boat sail by on the horizon. Nothing ever pulls in. I heard that 40% of the kids under 12 in Salinas have never seen the ocean. You guys know how far Salinas is from the ocean. Same statistic in Santa Ana in LA. So that's something that we want to take a crack at. And we get 100 kids on the boat, we'll catch one or two of them with some lifelong bug that will not go away. Yes, sir.
The engine that was dismounted, is that the same engine from 1940?
No, it had a GM engine in it that had been put in. I think this was actually its third engine that we pulled out. Did you guys put a new engine in it?
Yeah, we put the 12 feet. The one that was
Okay.
in
Yeah.
put it in.
Yeah.
The old cat, it blew up.
Yeah. So that was the third one that was in there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
third engine.
Yes, ma'am.
When do you expect to launch?
We're hoping September of 2018 is our target date.
During the old boat show?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, I figure they're going to be opening up that red crab season in Cook Inland again, and I'll probably have some fishing.
Well,
We could go first class and have a hell of a
I said no whale watches or sunset cruises, but that sounds interesting. Yeah. Got 'em.
Out there, you got one of the prettiest boats that was built. I mean,
Yeah.
had two other sardine seiners, but that Gemini or Western Fire, it's just, it had something to it. I don't know what.
Why didn't you guys change the interior? Why did you guys leave it the same?
No, we did.
No,
It was original.
yeah, but why did you leave it that way? Because it was certainly inconvenient.
That's the way that's the way it was. That's the way we fished it.
Yeah.
There's no need to change it. Dad had his little stateroom, and we had the bunks.
Yeah.
Gally had the nice big oil stove. It was comfortable.
Yeah. Nice.
Very comfortable.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I heard the possibility that Western Fire is moving up to Monterey
Can you repeat the question?
and be more here.
Yep. It will probably be, if we have to pick a headquarters, it'll be here, but hopefully it'll be working a lot. you know, it'll do daily cruises out on the bay and stuff, so, yeah. Nice. Good. Thank you.
Do you need a sea shanty, man?
Yeah, all the help we can get. Yeah. Anything else?
Wow, it's big.
Way bigger than you think. They always
Oh my
look bigger out of
gosh,
water.
look at the beautiful colors.
Welcome to the Western Flyer. It's kind of where to live for the next 16, 18 months.
Barnacle. Yes, there's one left.
The keel was built, so.
See if there's Sea of Cortez barnacles.
So what kind of wood is this?
It's all Douglas fir.
It's all Douglas.
So this is white oak.
And here are those square-headed nails.
Yeah, we've saved pretty much every one of them that came out of the boat. So again, the construction method, materials used will be
Necklace, John.
identical. This boat's got all the history of it right there on paper. And it's got a great story in there with the Steinbecks.
I read about the Western Flyer in the book Sea of Cortez when I was a kid. You know, I read about this adventure these guys took with their buddies, and it was pretty captivating at the time. You know, it's a nice story. You guys get to go in a sunny place and have fun and be with your buddies and do some science. You know, there's what's not to like about that.
Those are oak. We're kind of walking where John Steinbeck
John Steinbeck walked
and
here.
Ricketts walked. You know, there's so many stories of the boat, what happened in the different compartments of the rooms, how the fish hole. So we're preserving the story.
This is where Carol made her lemon pie.
The boat originally had a 165 horsepower Atlas engine.
This is where Steinbeck slept, huh?
Maybe Chris to show them where they slept.
It is.
Here.
Yeah. It was a sizable piece of machinery. You know, it easily went from my left hand all the way aft to Eric. It would have been the size of a modern Dodge truck.
So this will replace that in terms of continuous output.
We're not trying to match the Atlas diesel power. We're actually going to exceed the Atlas diesel power by probably twice or better.
You know, it's one thing if you see a modern aluminum catamaran slicing through the water with a propulsion system, you think that's cool. But if you see an 80-year-old boat that's slicing through the water with a modern propulsion system, you start to think, that could be applicable in this and this and this, and it'll generate a lot of ideas, I think, if we can showcase that, you know, you can blend the old with the new.
The electric propulsion will be perfect for this. It'll travel through the water silently, out of Monterey Bay. They'll be able to move through the kelp beds quietly.
We're going to try to make it a state-of-the-art research vessel as well.
Very excited about the project. Immediately started thinking some ideas. How would we use this fish room? What would we do? We immediately threw out that idea to turn this into a study space. Maybe there would be a large sorting table where they would put a some specimen right here, and there'd be 6 students here and 6 students there, and they'd have a light here, and they'd be sorting through.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of cool, this place where countless millions of fish died. We're gonna hopefully, educate some kids and maybe, do some saving of fish. Every year we'd like to plan out some trips along the West Coast, maybe to go to some of the underserved ports where usually research things and exhibits just cruise by on the way to bigger cities. I'd like to pull into some of these small ports and make this sort of platform available to kids that otherwise just watch them go by on the horizon. I mean, the vision is if you get 100 kids on board here, if you'll get 2 or 3 of them that will be hooked, and they'll be lifelong scientists.
A child is a natural experimental scientist, and that's from the day they're born.
It's going to be something that has the bones of what it was, but yet is a vision for the future. And this cutting-edge science and research and bringing students for, field studies and participatory science. So it's repurposing it to be something that is incredibly exciting.
You can attach yourself like a barnacle to something that has significance that goes through generations, then attach yourself to it.